Welcome to Genesis Volatility Part 3 of our Python educational tutorial. Today we're going to be covering a popular Python charting library called Plotly. And just to kind of reiterate where we started and where we are now, so in lesson 1 what we did is get everything installed, the Python package manager. We've learned how to declare variables and functions. Lesson 2, we installed Pandas. We worked with a CSV that we imported into Python's Pandas data frame. We did some data manipulation, and then we did some really basic plotting. Today what we're going to be focusing on is using the code from lesson 2 to extend a better plotting chart library and just make a little bit more user-friendly and kind of walk through some of the things that you can do at a higher level. So first things first, we're going to want to open our terminal and make sure that we have Plotly installed. So we do this by running pip3 install Plotly. All right, so I've got this installed already. So let's open our Jupyter notebook. Great, so let me get this in frame. All right, perfect. So I've got a file created for this tutorial. I'm going to go ahead and open it, and we should have no code in our notebook. All right, here we go. A little slow here. So like I said, we're going to be basing this off the code that we did in the previous lesson. I'm just going to walk through that really quickly as I type it out again. If you want to just work off the previous notebook and kind of skip through this section, feel free. I do feel that if you're new to Python and new to language, repetition is always helpful. So first things, I'm going to want to install the dependencies that we need. So we're going to be working with Pandas again. So we're going to import Pandas as PD, import numpy as np, execute our cell, open up a new one. Now we're going to read in our data frame. So create a variable called df and set it equal to pd.read underscore CSV. Then the name of the CSV that we're importing, ohlc.csv. And then we got to remember to set our index column equal to date. Cool, so we've got our data frame ready to go. Now let's create the simple moving averages that we did in the previous lesson. So just to reiterate, to define a new column in our data frame, we define the data frame and then the name that we want to give it. And then what we want that column to be equal to. So I'm going to say I want it to be equal to the open value dot rolling 10, and I want the 10-day average. All right, and I'm actually just going to copy pasta this, paste it down below, and give this a new name. So I'm going to do the 30-day, change this to 30, and then I'm going to execute this. So this actually creates both columns in one cell. You can do this. You can create as many commands in one cell as you want. This just gives you the opportunity to write it all in one cell and execute it when you hit Control-Enter to run that code. So I'm going to create a couple new ones that we may not have had in the previous lesson. This one we did. This one was called previous days open. And this was equal to the data frame value of open minus, shift 1. So this takes the previous day and adds it to the column or the row for the current day. Now let's add another one where we take the difference between today's open value and yesterday's open value. So I'm going to call this one daily change. And we're going to set this equal to, should be pretty straightforward, which is the open of today minus the previous day open. Then let's add a couple other columns just for the sake of it. So let's say we want to do like a categorical variable on whether the day difference is a positive or negative difference. So let's call this up or down day. So what we can do here, and this is actually another cool thing that NumPy allows you to do, is kind of set conditional data variables. So if we do np for numpy, where the daily change is greater than 0, then we're going to call this an up day. Otherwise, we'll call it down day. All right, really quick before we continue on, let's just take a quick look at our data frame. So we have our simple moving averages, previous day open, the daily change, up day or down day. Perfect, so we got everything we need. So let's just go ahead and start with the plot that we ended with last time. So we're gonna do the close and we'll do the simple moving average, 30 days, and we'll just run plot. Okay, cool. So what you'll notice is we get the plot. This is similar to what we saw last time, but you're probably wondering, well, why did we just install Plotly if we can do this? So what I want to show you is kind of the contrast in what you get between different charting libraries. So under the hood right now, as a default, Pandas uses a charting library called matplotlib. We're going to use Plotly. So we've installed it. Now, how do we tell Pandas that we want to use a different library? Well, I'm going to go back up to our first cell. And again, you can actually execute this anywhere, but it's just normally best practice to keep your imports and configurations towards the top of your code. So I'm going to type pd options plotting dot backend. And I want to set the backend equal to Plotly, which we just installed. I'm going to run the code in that cell, and then let's just go down here and rerun this code and see how it looks. Cool. So the chart looks the same. However, it comes with a bunch of additional functionality. It's a lot cleaner to use. It's easier to analyze in a more granular sense. So what we can see here is that we can actually hover over the charts, get the variable value that's being plotted on this line, the date, the value for that date. We can click on and off certain variables. We can download and share screenshots. We can zoom in on a specific period of interest. And you can kind of get into kind of more details in this charting library. So now that we've kind of got Plotly installed, there's a lot more that you can do with it. I'm going to show you a few other examples if you wanted to do different chart types. So I'm going to open up a new cell and we'll just go ahead and so Plotly out of the box and Pandas kind of identifies the chart type that you want if you give it the proper variables. But let's say for the example of this, we actually don't want a line chart, we want to do something different. So let's say we wanted to do a bar chart that plots the daily change. So we're going to say df daily change dot plot. Now if I open up the parentheses, if I hit Shift Tab, this is actually a really helpful tip as you kind of learn this stuff, what type of things I can put in between these parentheses, what type of arguments you can put in these parentheses. So it takes a data value, which we've already defined as data frame daily change, an X and Y label, a kind, which is the type of chart that you want. So you can do a line, bar, horizontal bar, histogram, the list goes on. And there's a bunch of other arguments that you can pass in here to customize the chart. So if you're ever curious about all the things you can do, this is a great place to look. So I'm going to go ahead and say I want to create a bar chart. We'll scroll down. Again, you can kind of see how this charting library becomes a bit more useful than what comes out of the box for Pandas. Now, again, when it comes to customizing charts, visuals are important to have some context to it. So an up day normally is green, downs are red. So let's go through adding some custom configuration to this chart. So we have a value that we want to color code these values by. So if it's up day or a positive value, we want to be green. If it's a down day, we want to be red. So let's give the configuration in the plot function right here another argument called color. And we're going to set that equal to up day or down day. All right, then the other thing that we need to add to this is we need to tell it what colors we want it to use. So we can do color discrete map. And then, so basically what we're telling it is that when it sees these values, what color do you want the bar to be? So for an up day, we want it to be green. On a down day, we want it to be red. It didn't like something, key error, up day or down day. What did I call this? Oh, up or down day. Another thing is reading through errors. It's helpful to learn kind of what the error is telling you. So the name of the column that I was referencing was actually wrong. I called it up or down day. Perfect. So now you get more context to what's going on in this chart. You can see that the up day are green if I wanted to take a look at just the down days. Things like that. If you wanted to, again, zoom in on any of these areas or reset your zoom, all this stuff comes out of the box. And then finally, if you're going to share, important thing to give a chart is a title. So we'll call this up days, down days. All right, cool. So we've gone through some really basic stuff in terms of, again, expanding on what we learned in previous lessons, importing data frames, adding our own columns, manipulating the data a bit, and then finally to the point where we want to start exploring this data and seeing what's in here. So we've gone through installing Plotly and setting up some basic charts, highlighting some of the additional functionality, and doing some customization. Now, Plotly is an extremely strong library. There's a lot of things that you can do and all sorts of really cool visualizations that it comes with. But for the sake of keeping it simple, making sure we can get things up and running, I just want to give you something that you can take home, work on, explore a little bit more, break, and build upon. And then I'll leave information for the documentation to Plotly in the description, because I think this is a great resource to reference when you're looking to do something a bit deeper. So again, we've gotten Python installed, we've learned about data frames, and now we're to the point where we're plotting it. Where we'll go from here next is we're actually going to use the gvol module to import some option-specific data. We'll do some analysis on this. We'll plot our own skews. We'll do some open interest value analysis and kind of go from there. So thanks for joining. We'll catch you on the next one where we'll go deep into some of the options analytics. Thanks.